This is Alicia Kinder. I'm doing my interview coding assignment for Dr. Williams' class on educational research. And today I'm interviewing Lisa Shrewsberry. Lisa is an 8th grade ELA teacher at Beckley Stratton Middle School. And we're going to talk a little bit about educational research today. Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Do I have your permission to interview you and put you on video?
You have my permission to interview me and put me on video.
Let's do it then. All right, Lisa. I know you're a teacher. You've been teaching for several years now.
Mm-hmm.
My first question for you is, do you conduct research yourself?
Yes, in the classroom, I often use my students as the subjects for different techniques that I might teach, different strategies that I would use to, especially when I find that they're not working to maybe my goals for them, or when I discover that there is something that they're not to the level that they should be, or maybe not even to the level, not just numbers like with grades or with reading ability, but also with just performance and enthusiasm, I guess, about the subject. So yes, I do conduct research I'll choose either a certain group within a classroom to do my research on, or generally I'll choose what I would consider a higher end and a lower end classroom, the higher performers and lower performers, to observe them and to implement strategies to kind of push them to the next level wherever they are.
Is that more of like a comparative type of study that you're doing, where you're looking between those two groups?
Well, it can be. That's sort of always in the background, because the question is, how can I have all of 200 8th graders, and half of them are maybe in more of an elementary school reading level, right, and the others are at an upper and high school or even collegiate reading level. And then how am I going to cover the same material? Do I cover the same material? You know, how am I going to have these same people in the same classroom and get them to what their next level would be?
Yeah, especially when there's such a gulf in ability that you have there, and yet you're required to hit the same standards.
Exactly.
For all those kids.
Even though every year brings new students, and you automatically have to do research, observational research, to see where those students are when they come in your classroom, because if you make a huge mistake if you presume that next year's crop of students is going to be the same as the last. They're vastly different each year. The same strategies. That's why I don't understand how any teacher could have a lesson plan that they keep for every year. And don't modify, because the students' receptivity, their ability, their responsiveness, all of that varies just with their 200 new unique individuals from the last 200 that we had.
Right.
And so you're constantly researching just informally, but then also more formalized research, meaning coming up with what you think is an issue or what you think might be a solution, and then actually trying it in the classroom, and then seeing how you could use that throughout the year, because your goal is to, of course, improve them. And if a strategy works in one year, it should work again for the next group of students, but that isn't always the case. So I would say on a yearly basis, I'm doing some
kind of research.
Right.
Yeah. Now, instrument-wise, like, do you use various kinds of instruments? Like, do you give your students questionnaires? You told me you did some observation. Do you sometimes do more like participation? What kind of instruments?
I would say all. Certainly observation, and then it can't just be all observation, because sometimes what you perceive isn't actually what how things are. So in the past, for instance, and I still do this at the beginning of the year when I'm still getting to know the students, I'll give them questionnaires that are, I've called it up to this point, the reading interest inventory. And then based on what I know about them from their levels, I'll inherit their scores or their teacher observation notes, how they performed the year previous. I speak to the counselor about them. And then I'll change the questions in that questionnaire for that group of students to sort of see if I'm on the right track with where I think they're going to be.
So are you saying you apply historical data to your questionnaires to sort of make it fit more with what you're
Absolutely.
observing? Okay.
There are basic questions that stay the same. How much do you read? What kinds of things do you read? That sort of thing. So I gather data that way. But then, for instance, last year I saw that the vocabulary seemed to be weak. Vocabulary acquisition was a challenge, not just for my maybe my students who were at the lower Lexiles, but also at the higher, my honors students were still performing poorly on vocabulary acquisition. So one of the questions that I put in the reading interest inventory was, what happens when you encounter a word when you're reading that you don't know, you don't understand? What do you do?
Yeah.
Do you, I gave a couple of examples.
Oh, okay.
Do you skip over the word? Do you try to understand what it is? Do you stop and look it up to see what it is? So that kind of helped me to know how they approach vocabulary, when they're reading something that's a little bit more challenging, because the goal is always to give them something slightly more challenging than exactly within where their reading level is.
Okay. Sounds like it's providing you with some good data to sort of tweak your lesson plans for what the students need. So moving on, what sort of research topics would you say are most relevant to your job as a teacher?
To my job as a teacher, I discerned very quickly that, what goes on at home is very important, to the performance in the classroom. Not just, to pigeonhole it like, well, in this demographic where they're impoverished or whatever, because we really have a diverse group, but more the level of how families value education, because I found that in lower income families compared to higher income families, I think the research shows, and what already exists out there, that there are different value systems. And so why a student might come in my classroom and choose to sleep, it could be because my content's very boring or very not stimulating enough to that student. But if it's just that student and everyone else seems engaged, then why that student? And I mean, if I dig deeper, I may find out that, the family has been telling them all along, well, you're just going to get to 16 and then you're going to quit and you're going to be a mechanic like your dad. Yeah. Or you're going, so there are a lot of different things, and you can't judge that family. You can't judge that student, but it helps to know, my goal is to still engage them in education and to get them to buy into the fact that I don't care if you're going to be a mechanic or, what you're going to do in life, education, at least the 12 years that the county requires you to complete, is going to help you and going to create forward movement and help you be the best mechanic you can be, or whatever. So a lot of what I do is to research the value systems within our community and at different income levels. I do believe that they're very closely related based on research that I've read, but also what I've just sort of discerned from conversations with parents and with the students in the classroom.
As a casual observer in the classroom, I would agree with you. I've definitely seen that there are different value systems in different families when it comes to education, for sure.
Right, and sometimes that creates it would help you, because you should have, as a teacher, a goal for every student, and you and that student should share that goal. It can't just be one-sided. Yeah. And so I might want that student to be at an 11th grade reading level and think that I could push them there, but maybe that student just wants to be able to start his own business. And so, I might, with that student, focus more on, I might even have as an assignment like a business proposal, or I might, tweak the delivery method with those particular students based on their goals.
So it's more applicable to what their goal is.
Because if you can't get them to buy in, if someone's, I'm not going to get that student probably to really get excited about reading
War and Peace.
Yeah.
Does anybody
or any
classics,
unless I'm speaking their language or show them that there's something in it for them. Yes. And then if I can get them to buy in, then they'll naturally, perform at their highest level.
Okay. Well, I had a question for you about encountering situations where you've wanted to do research in the classroom, but you really sort of answered that a little bit in what you just talked about. And you talked a little bit about more like a case study of like looking at a particular student and, asking questions about their behavior and how that works. And we talked also about how cultural differences affect class participation sometimes, which I've told you I've noticed that a lot too. So I'll skip on to the next question and ask you, do you yourself actively access research information that you think is relevant to your job that helps you inform some of your choices in the classroom?
Yes, I'm always looking for new books about ELA in the classroom, and specifically to 8th graders. And I find that there are a couple of places online that I'll routinely go, like this is summer, and during the summer I'm overhauling and creating a new curriculum for the next year.
Okay.
And so I'm keeping what worked for me in the classroom last year that I think might work for another diverse group of students. But then I'm also looking to see if there's anything new. So I do know that relatively recently there was a lot of buzz about, we're going to have this resurgence of teaching cursive again.
Yeah.
There's a whole generation of students that completely missed that. And within my classroom, students have to go back to historical documents a lot as primary sources for information. And I found that many of those are written in cursive.
In cursive, yeah.
And so I'm going to assess this year their level of knowledge with cursive writing, because this has been out for a couple of years. And so I'm going to see if my students can both write and then read cursive writing, and if they can't, I will have to add that into my curriculum this year. And another thing is, as far as the situations and things that are relevant to help me develop my my curriculum, whenever students come to me and I'm not sure what it is that they're going to need from the data that's given to me, I'll go back to their teachers from the previous year, if at all possible, and get their observations from them. So it is that we've kind of created in our school a culture of documenting, so that we can move it forward and pay it forward to the next to help, so that it's sort of streamlined. And that's the philosophy of middle school anyway, to integrate both within your, definitely to integrate curriculum on your grade level, but also more of an integrated team approach throughout the school, so that so when I'm coming back in this year, a lot of my decisions will be based on other teachers' observational research who have had those students prior to me, because they obviously know them better than I do.
So it sounds like that research within your school is even something that is part of the culture. If I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounds, if I'm summing up what you just said, would you say that research is valued in your middle school?
Absolutely, and it's shared. So another thing that the English teachers across the grades discovered, or there's always chatter in the ELA world, and then you kind of you evaluate to see what is working and what doesn't. There are a couple of online websites that can do that. So I go to I think it's iris.gov, and that is sort of a clearinghouse of a collection of data as to whether this certain technique or this certain claim or this certain program works or doesn't work really.
So it's been sort of empirically tested already.
So you definitely want to do evidence-based teaching. You don't want to just throw things out there. I'm not just going to put a couch in my classroom if alternative seating hasn't been proven to do anything different. But there was some discussion about note-taking as well, and we've gone to all iPads, and I believe that there, just observationally, was some problems with retention of material that students had just typed in, and we've discovered that actually writing helps students to retain more. So that was some information that we shared, and now all of the teachers are on board with trying to have students handwrite their notes versus
That's great.
Okay.
So. All right. Well, thank you for answering all my questions,
Thank
Lisa.
you.